Welcome to PatsCast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The New England Patriots are yet to name a general manager, and it doesn't sound like they are going to anytime soon. However, NFL teams are required to eventually appoint a head executive, and that role may come down to two existing front office members, either Matt Groh, the director of player personnel, or Elliott Wolf, the director of scouting. And then we did have a report come out from The Athletic the other day from Jeff Howe saying, if it's Elliott Wolf, the director of scouting, if he indeed is the one running the show, expect the Patriots to give a long, hard look at drafting a left tackle with the number 3 pick. No. This is bonkers. Look, I'm open to the idea I'm not drafting a QB at 3rd overall. I really am. Especially if you're not impressed with either Jaden Daniels or Drake May, which they might not be. But if you're going to stay at number 3 and not take a QB, you have to take Marvin Harrison Jr., a potential once-in-a-generation wide receiver, something the Patriots have not had since Randy Moss, really. And Randy Moss, yes, I know he set an NFL record for touchdowns, but he was actually on the older side when he came to New England. So they would have a young stud, probably top 10 NFL wide receiver right away if you take Marvin Harrison. If you're going to stick with number 3 and you don't want Drake May or Jaden Daniels, you got to take Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm sorry, okay? Now, look, there is an argument, and Tommy Curran made this point last week, that you draft a tackle like Joel Alt early in the first round. He's presumably the best tackle available in this draft. But to do that, you have to trade back at least, right? And acquire more assets in the first round. Then maybe you could still have a shot at like LSU's Malik Neighbors or Washington's Rome Odunze, who seems to be moving up all the mock draft boards. Some even have him ahead of Neighbors. He has a lot more size. He's 6'3", actually looks a lot bigger on the field. So, look, maybe you can trade back and then draft, a Odunze or Neighbors or somebody in a tackle. And there are plenty of teams that are looking for starting quarterbacks that would probably love either Drake May or Jaden Daniels if they're available at number 3. Teams like the Titans, the Giants, the Falcons, the Raiders, there are others as well, all looking for quarterbacks. And look, there's a lot of tackle talent in this draft. Some people think there could be 8 or 9 tackles taken in the first round, which would be an NFL record. That's never happened before. I think the record's 7. It might be 8. I believe it's 7. But look, if the Patriots waste the number 3 pick on Joel Alt, who, mind you, will probably be very good, they still have to figure out the quarterback position and bring in a top-tier receiver. It would be a total waste. So here's an idea. If you don't take a quarterback, trade back. Then if you can't get Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield, go sign Jacoby Meyers or Joe Flacco, both who've worked with the new offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt. Bring them in as a bridge and develop the next starting QB that you could take probably in the 2nd or 3rd round. Could be Bo Nix, could be Michael Penix. I bet those guys are probably going in the 1st round, though, with all the teams needing quarterbacks. So more likely it's going to be J.J. McCarthy or Spencer Rattler or somebody, okay? And have them also compete with Mac Jones and or Bailey Zappi for the backup role. Hell, if it's going to be Jacoby Meyers, have them all compete for the starting job. I'm still open to Mac Jones. I'm more open than anybody else is if he can work on his head case issues in the offseason and beat out those guys in training camp, which Mac Jones is very good in training camp when he's not taking hits. All right? But you got to trade back. If you're going to take a tackle, you got to trade back, and you got to prioritize the receiver position. Then, okay, you use your early 1st round pick on either Neighbors or Odunze, and then ideally you take a later 1st rounder, which hopefully you've acquired via trade, and take the best available tackle. I think that would work. I would not be upset if that's what the Patriots did. But if they stay at number 3 and go ahead and draft Joe Alt, then this is just Belichick all over again, all right? You might as well just take a long snapper from Wayne State while you're at it. Okay, or you fill out some of these roles in free agency, okay? I think the biggest priority for the Patriots this offseason, as soon as free agency starts, is you got to re-sign Michael Onwenu. Whether he's at right guard or right tackle, you got to bring him back. You could probably get him for $15 million. Might be closer to $17, $18 million. but he's worth it. He's young. He's one of the top young offensive linemen in the league. Played very well at tackle. That means he's going to be a little bit more expensive, right? But you got to bring back Onwenu. And then maybe take a stab at a guy like Tyron Smith for a year or two from Dallas. I think if you brought him in at left tackle, he would do an excellent job. And then you got Onwenu on the right, and you got Tyron Smith on the left. Or you take another tackle in the draft, you kick Onwenu back inside to right guard. There's a lot of things you can do. Hell, there's still Trent Brown. Teams know Trent Brown will not be anywhere near as productive outside of New England. Because we've seen it before. He's not the same guy outside of Foxborough. Yes, I know there are head case issues there. I'm not a big fan of bringing Trent Brown back. But, look, it didn't work with Bill Belichick and Adrian Clem, who I don't even know what the hell Adrian Clem was doing this past season. He was gone at one point. There were health issues. They didn't really say what it was. I don't know if that was something going on between the coaches, but obviously didn't work with Belichick and Clem and Trent Brown this year. But perhaps you got more charismatic, player-oriented guys like Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt. They could potentially bring in Andy Dickerson, the offensive line coach from Seattle. Sounds like the Patriots are really targeting to bring him in, who would completely change that offensive line overnight with his coaching style. I think he would do a great job. And just remember, an engaged Trent Brown is one of the best tackles in the NFL, okay? So if you think Trent Brown could work with Mayo, Van Pelt, and whomever the next offensive line coach is, then you got to bring him back, and you can probably bring him back on the cheap because no other team is going to pay Trent Brown as much as the Patriots probably would because he's not going to work well anywhere else. Like I said, we've seen that before. I'd also love to see them target some elite receivers in free agency, target T. Higgins, target Mike Evans, target Michael Pittman. Some of those guys will probably be franchise tags, so who knows will be available. But you have Brady give Mike Evans a call and say, hey, I think you'd be great in New England. You should go up there. It might work out. Or Calvin Ridley. He's another rumor guy. I think he'd be great for the Patriots. Give him that good number one option that they've been missing for a long time. There's a lot of ways you can slice it, fill out the roster prior to the NFL draft, and then, hopefully take the pressure off a little bit heading into draft day. Look, this offense is being rebuilt entirely from scratch, but frankly, free agency is far more important, in my opinion, than the NFL draft because that will determine what your needs are heading into late April. Remember, Bill Belichick did not draft based on need. He's admitted that. I always take the best player available, even if we have 5 other guards on the roster we're happy with. If the top guy on our draft board's a guard, we're drafting a guard. He did that with Cole Strange. I like Cole Strange. I think he'll be great as long as he's healthy. But you could have gotten him in the second or third round. But that's just what Belichick does. I hope that's going to be a little bit different with Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf or Matt Groh or whoever you have out there. But the less needs that you have to fill heading into draft day, the better. And then you can take the pressure off a little bit and fill out that roster with what you need if you have a really strong free agency. And hell, if you have a strong free agency and the only QB you really like is Caleb Williams, trade your second round pick and a future first rounder or two and move up to number 1 and take Caleb Williams. There's reports out there, at least according to Colin Cowherd, that Caleb Williams really doesn't want to play in Chicago. Now, does that mean he wants to play in New England? I don't know, but look, if you have a really solid free agency, you fill out the tackle spots, you bring in a really good receiver or two, then you can afford to trade some future picks and draft a guy like Caleb Williams. And suddenly you have a great offense on day one with basically a young Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott style hybrid out there who everyone believes is the best quarterback to come out of the draft, at least for the last few years. So, look, there's a lot you can do, but drafting Joe Alt or another tackle at number 3 overall when you could probably trade back, especially with some of these teams that are also in the top 10 that need quarterbacks. One of them's going to fall in love with Drake May or Jaden Daniels. You got to do it, okay? Like, let's not overthink this. I hope Jeff Howe, the Athletic, is just, throwing that out there because he knows that Elliott Wolf likes tackles. They need a tackle. They got to draft a tackle. And there's probably still going to be some really good guys early in the second round where the Patriots are drafting. I think they have the second pick in the second round this year. So you can get a tackle there too. But, I say, look, you like Drake May or Jaden Daniels. If one of those guys is available at third overall, or ideally Marvin Harrison's taken before, and then you can pick between the two, that's the best case scenario. Otherwise, you should trade back. They're rebuilding this offense from scratch, especially if you don't have a good free agency. You got to acquire as much draft capital as possible and really try to fill out that QB room with guys that can compete with the job. And that way you're not going into the season with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi again. And again, I'm open to either. I like Mac. I like Bailey more than most. But yeah, you gotta acquire some draft capital if you're not going to do that. So some other news that broke today. Defensive play caller Steve Belichick is moving on from the New England Patriots. He's accepted the role as defensive coordinator for the University of Washington, the runner-up in this year's college football national championship game. Patriots obviously wanted to keep Steve Belichick. I would have loved to see him elevated to an assistant head coach position. I think he would have been great in that role, still have input on that defense. He's been the play caller there for the last few years, done an excellent job working alongside Jerod Mayo. No word on if the Patriots did offer him a role like that. I would have really liked to see it, but that's not what is going to happen. That said, this is probably the best situation for him. He's moving on to probably the second best team in college football, at least according to this past season. And he's also able to separate himself from Belichick's roots in New England, Bill Belichick, his father, and really create his own future. Ideally, if he does well, he can continue moving up and maybe potentially become a future head coach in either the NFL or college. I think the biggest test for Steve Belichick, of course, is running team meetings, which he didn't really do in New England. He's kind of an introvert. Yes, he was the play caller, but for the most part, Jerod Mayo was the one designing the scheme and running team meetings and really being the glue for that defense that really has excelled the last 5 seasons. Despite the poor offensive play in New England, the reason they've been able to win football games is because of that defense, and Steve Belichick has certainly been a part of that. But how is he going to do at the University of Washington leading team meetings, especially with college kids? I mean, these aren't pros. These are guys that are going to demand your attention, and can Steve Belichick really captivate the room? That remains to be seen, but hey, I wish him well, and I hope we see him in the NFL as a head coach someday. I think that's a better fit for him than being a head coach in college and having to recruit and meet high school players and all that. But maybe he likes it and that's what he wants to do. But more power to him. I wish him all the best. I would have loved to see him stay, but this is a good situation for him, and I wish him all the best. Still no word on if Brian Belichick is staying or going elsewhere. The Patriots have also expressed that they would like to keep him there. Hopefully you can keep him as well. But chances are, if Steve Belichick is moving on, Brian probably is as well. I would expect him probably not to go to an NFL team. Maybe he'll consider another college-type role. Maybe a defensive coordinator role at a lesser D1 school, or I don't know, maybe he goes to Wesleyan or some other school and becomes their head coach. Who the hell knows? But that's what's going on with those two. Clearly, Jerod Mayo kind of wants a clean slate. Even though they did want to keep both of them, and they have a good relationship with Mayo. Obviously, what the Patriots are offering was not good enough, at least to Steve Belichick. We'll see what happens with Brian. If you like this video, be sure to click the like button on YouTube and subscribe and hit the alert bell and do all that stuff. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe there as well. We're really trying to grow this thing, and we'll be back tomorrow with the latest in Patriots news.